Okay, so like I said, today we're talking about East and West Africa. Um, there's really four, but actually five different civilizations that we'll cover in here. Um, and it's our last two lessons of the class. So you are almost done. We're also going to go over kind of the last sprite assignment at the end here. And then once you guys do that last sprite assignment, I'll go ahead and email you the study guide for the final exam and the password for it as well so that you can take it. Okay? All right, so once again, let's quickly go over our live lesson procedures. Make sure we stay focused while we're here. Participate when you're asked. Use the chat for lesson purposes only. Make sure you are respectful to one another. Do not leave this session early unless you absolutely have to. Follow all the Microsoft Team rules, which are turn off your camera and microphone. If you wish to speak, click the raise hand button. Once Mr. Privatera calls your name, you can unmute yourself to speak. And when you're done, you can go ahead and remute and lower your hand. And of course, most importantly, make sure that while you're here, you learn lots. Okay, so the learning goal is that the student will be able to define what a traditional economy is, explain what led to the rise of the merchant class, and interpret the ecosystems of West Africa, and explain the rise and fall of the Eastern and Western African empires. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So our first topic is going to be East Africa, okay? Particularly the empires of Kush and Axum. So let's take a look. We talked about Egypt. If you look at that map, that's kind of in the north at the top of that map, ancient Egypt, right? A long time ago back in module 2, we talked about that. So the next group that we're going to talk about is just south of there, the Kush, okay? And they were they'd been around a long time. For a while, they were part of ancient Egypt. Then for a while, they kind of get their independence and are kind of their own civilization. And then again, they're kind of part of Egypt again. So it kind of has a intertwined history with ancient Egypt. And then finally, today we're going to talk about Axum. Sometimes you see it spelled with an X, and sometimes you see it spelled with a KS, right? Sometimes it's AXUM, and sometimes it's AKSUM. Whichever way you see it is fine. Not one of them isn't wrong or right. It's just two different ways of spelling it. Okay. All right. So the kingdom of Kush. So in ancient Africa, the civilization of Egypt was very powerful. However, Egypt had many neighbors, and one of those neighbors was Nubia. Nubia had rich resources, and it wasn't long before the ancient Egyptians took them over. 1,000 years later, a powerful people began to grow in northern Nubia. These people would become strong enough to push the Egyptians out. The new kingdom and the new people were called the Kingdom of Kush by the ancient Egyptians. Like Egypt, Kush depended on the Nile River for its water supply. Most of the people at this time were farmers. They used the Nile River to water their crops. They built a traditional economy, meaning that it was built on agriculture or farming. If it says traditional economy, that means they were farmers. The Kush possessed other resources as well. They had gold, copper, and dolerite stone. Dolerite stone looks like kind of a black granite, and it's used to make statues. Both countries liked to kind of erect images of their heroes. The people of Kush traded these metals and minerals with Egypt, and in return, they received things like food and cotton. Even after the people of Kush pushed the Egyptians out of their land, Egypt had kind of a strong influence on the region. For many years, Egypt was the greater power and demanded that the Kush pay them tribute in gold, copper, and iron. And in return, Egypt promised not to invade the Kush. So as long as you pay us gold, we won't invade you. Eventually, one of the pharaohs became extremely frightened of the Kush and believed that it was getting too strong. His army defeated the Kush army and destroyed the capital. And even though the Kush kingdom was weakened, there was kind of a bright side in their defeat. The Kush people learned how to make iron, and then they traded their iron for other important resources. This period was known as the Iron Age, and other countries needed iron to create strong tools and weapons. The people of Kush used wood fires to smelt their iron. However, when the wood supply began to decline, the loss of the major product the amount of iron produced also declined, and the loss of this major product would be a contributing factor to the final fall of the Kush Empire. Okay, if all you depend on is iron, but you don't have any trees for wood to make that iron, you're in big trouble. So Kush's location put them in a great place for trade. In addition to the Nile River, Kush bordered the Red Sea, and this seaport allowed the merchants of Kush to access other foreign ports. Sailors from Kush could travel to the Arab region, the Mediterranean region, and beyond. Foreign travelers as far away from Rome, North Africa, India, and Asia could be found in the Kush marketplaces. Some traveled by sea, and some came along the Silk Road. So once the Kush, their influence kind of falls away, we have a new kingdom that arises, and that's Axum. So soldiers from a kingdom called Axum began to attack the Kush. With trade switching from land to sea, the Kush had become weak and poor, and soon Axum becomes the dominant Eastern African power. But no one knows for sure when the kingdom of Axum began. Axum is located just south of Kush on kind of a high plateau region. Today, it's the country of Ethiopia is located there. By conquering the Kush, Axum had now had more power. This combined with their access to the Red Sea led to an increase in their trade. So if you look at that map, guys, if you look where they're located, they're kind of in between the sea route from India to the Roman Empire. So they're like a halfway stop. What a great location to be in as far as trade is concerned. Traders used the Silk Road. Traders using the Silk Road came to Axum for its salt, gold, and gems. Animal products such as ivory, rhinoceros horns, and tortoise shells were also traded in the marketplace. In return, they brought with them silk, spices, olive oil, wine, brass, and iron. They quickly opened even more trading markets in Egypt and the Mediterranean area. Greek and Roman traders often came to Axum, and these traders offered many goods such as steel and cloth. So what was the culture like in Axum? Well, it had a blended culture. People from many different areas and lands lived in Axum and called it their home. People from Arab countries had crossed the Red Sea and settled in Axum. Being neighbors to the Kush had attracted many people from this country as well. People who spoke different languages and customs could be found in the marketplace of the port cities along the Red Sea. Besides goods and languages, religion and other ideas were being traded in the marketplaces. From the beginning, the people of Axum worshipped one god. They called their god Maram, and they also worshipped nature and honored the spirits of their ancestors. But eventually, Christianity would actually come to Axum. So at this time, Christianity was spreading to different parts of the world. It arrived with traders and other travelers from the Roman Empire, right? Azana was the king of Axum, and he kind of became king as a young boy and was trained by his teachers and hired by his mother. One of his teachers, a man from Syria, was a Christian. Azana kind of converted to the Christian faith and made it the official religion of his country. Christianity in Axum took a different spin than Christianity in other places. The people followed a leader called the Patriarch. They had different customs than people in the Christian churches in other places. Today, 2,000 years later, Christianity is still the major religion in Ethiopia, where the kingdom of Axum was located. So Christianity is still around today in that same area. Okay, so the fall of Axum, like all the other civilizations we talked about, they rise and they fall. Over time, Islam began to spread into the region. Many of the followers of Islam were conquering nearby countries. At first, they left Axum alone, and this allowed Axum to continue their rise to power without fear. However, this peace didn't last, and eventually, Axum's major cities on the coast fell to these invaders. This weakened Axum's economy, and it also led to the kingdom's fall. But to keep their government safe from further invasion, Axum actually moves its capital and put it in the mountains between the city and the Red Sea. But even though this location kept the government safe, it also isolated the kingdom from the outside world. So they didn't have any more trade or anything like that that made the country the great country that it was. Okay, so continuing with the fall, for centuries the people of Axum had overworked the soil. had overworked the soil. They had also cut down too many trees. Years of farming and burning wood for iron making had taken its toll. The people of Axum failed to kind of replenish the natural resources that they once had. The people suffered and starved, and the country became really poor as a result. Okay, let's see how we did here. So which of the following did not contribute to the rise of the Kush? Was it iron, the Nile River, isolationism, or trade? Anya, what do we think?
C.
C. I agree. Good job. Which of the following statements best describes why the kingdom of Kush fell? They died out from a mysterious disease. They did not produce enough food to feed its people. The Kush overused natural resources and did nothing to replace them. And the Kush allowed barbarians to overrun their country. Luis, what do we think?
C.
Good, C. So the Kush and Axum both kind of fall for the same reason, and that's C, right? Not enough to replenish their resources. Good. Which king made Christianity the official religion of Axum? Which one of those, A, B, C, or D? Which one was made it Christianity the official religion? Maria, what do we think?
King Aslan.
There we go. E. Good job. And how were traders able to reach the markets of Axum? How did they get there? The Indian Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and the Red Sea. The Indian Ocean, the Red Sea, and the Nile River. The Red Sea, the Nile River, and the Atlantic Ocean. And the Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, and the Indian Ocean. That one might be a little tricky if you're not looking at a map. Rhea, what do you think?
C.
C. Okay, so to be C, it would have to actually be in West Africa because that's where the Atlantic Ocean touches. But that's a good. Okay, Nicholas, what do you think?
B.
I agree. B. Good. So they can get there by the Indian Ocean, the Red Sea, and the Nile River. Good job. Like I said, that one's a little tricky without a map. Both Egypt and the Kush had traditional economies. This means that the economies of both civilizations developed what? High taxes, heavy industry, agriculture, or protection. What does it mean to have a traditional economy? Let's see. Rhea, do you want to try again?
Yeah, it's C. They're farmers.
Good. They're farmers. They're agriculture. Good job. All right. And which statement about the religion in Axum is true? They were Muslim, they were Hindu, they were Taoist, or they were Christian? Dahlia, what do we think?
D.
D, they were Christian. Good. All right. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about West Africa. So we were just talking about, Far East Africa, much closer to the other areas that we talked about throughout the school year. Now we're switching gears and moving to West Africa. Okay. So before we get into kind of the map, let's talk about African geography. So Africa is the second largest continent in the world. A lot of people are surprised by that, right? Asia is the biggest, Africa's second. And that's true in both the size of the continent and the population. There are a lot of people that live in Africa. Africa is home to some geographic wonders like the Sahara Desert, baobab trees, Mount Kilimanjaro, Victoria Falls, one of the largest waterfalls in the world. Lots of really kind of amazing things to see in Africa. And while Africa is mountainous, most of West Africa is close to the sea and flat, sea level. The landscape, however, is diverse. In West Africa, one can find a desert, a savanna, and a rainforest. To the south, kind of the Niger River is kind of the main river that runs through West Africa. The river kind of extends a total of 2,600 miles, and it irrigates over 800,000 square miles of land. It's the third largest river in Africa and the 14th largest river in the world. Okay, so civilization in West Africa revolves around the Niger River. So here are the three Niger River civilizations. First comes Ghana, which you'll see in kind of the purple there. Okay. Later you have Mali. That's the kind of area in green, and then you have the Songhai, which you see in yellow. So kind of three civilizations to develop in the same area in 3 different time periods. Okay, Dahlia, do you have a question?
No, sorry, I just forgot to put down my hand.
That's okay. How about you, Jonathan? Do you have a question?
Yeah, what is the largest river in the world?
The Amazon.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought it was the Nile.
So it also depends on what you mean too, as far as length or the amount of water in the river. Like there's lots of qualifications, but generally you'll say it's the Amazon. Okay, so the founding of Ghana, that very first one of those empires. Okay, no one is really certain when Ghana kind of began. It is before the 9th century, though, we know that. People began to kind of civilize the region much earlier. No one is even sure how the empire was founded. However, most people today believe that it was founded by a group of people called the Songhai or Songhai. I'm not even sure exactly how you say it. They gathered around their leader, who they thought was a god, just like many of the other European kings and Egyptian pharaohs that we talked about. They settled on the Niger River, whose predictable yearly floods made it a safe and reliable for farming. Okay, people aren't going to die in floods if every year at the same time the river floods to a certain level. If it's predictable, then it's not a big deal. It's actually a good thing because it'll flood your farmlands. So the government of Ghana. The Ghana Empire was ruled by a king. He had a council of elders who headed up the government. The king lived in the capital city, Kolumbai Salah. The king was kind of the central part of Ghana near the Sahara Desert. The rest of Ghana was divided into states, and each state was ruled by a powerful leader. Therefore, in a way, the Ghana Empire had many kings. The Ghana Empire also had a huge military, and according to legend, the army had 200,000 warriors and 440,000 archers. The king of the Ghana Empire welcomed foreigners into his country, and this was because many of them were traders, and these traders helped build the economy. Many were Arabs, and they brought the Muslim religion to Ghana. Islam and Muslim it's the same religion. And Islam is a monotheistic religion that follows the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad. Today, it is the 2nd largest religion in the world. In that capital city of Ghana, mosques were built for the visiting Arabs. Many people throughout Ghana also converted to Islam. However, the king always kept his own religious beliefs. Among the beliefs held by the traditional Ghana religion was that of Bida, a black snake that demanded human sacrifices every year to ensure the prosperity of Ghana. Jonathan, yes.
Oh, sorry, wrong thing.
Okay. Okay, so the economy of Ghana. Ghana's empire was very rich, and it made its wealth from the mining of gold and salt. However, there were no salt mines or gold mines in the Ghana Empire. Most of the salt mines were to the north and east of Ghana, and the gold mines were further south along the coast. The people of the coastal West Africa were more than happy to trade their gold for the table salt. They liked the way it tasted on their food, and they had far more gold than they can ever use. The kings of the Ghana Empire promised merchants who were traveling south to trade salt for gold that they would be protected by Ghana's great army. In exchange, the merchants would have to give the army a portion of the gold they brought back. They also changed taxes or charged taxes on the gold and salt that the merchants brought through Ghana. So they didn't get rich because they had the salt and gold. They got rich because the salt and gold is all around them, and they manipulated it to their benefit. So the main reason of Ghana's decline was the loss of its trading monopoly. New trade routes began to open in Eastern Africa. Merchants used these routes to reach the gold mines. Traders who did not want to pay the taxes the king of Ghana charged or give him a portion of the gold they took used these trade routes instead. Ghana suffered greatly when it lost its source of wealth. Ghana also experienced a horrible drought, and farmers were unable to grow their crops and raise their cattle. Many of Ghana's residents simply just moved away. Outside forces were also trying to take away Ghana's empire's land. A group of Muslims called the let's see, Almoravids came from Morocco to Ghana. Some legends say that they invaded Ghana around the year 1076 and sacked the cities. Others say that they kind of gradually moved into Ghana and took over the culture over the course of many years. Whichever one happened, whether it was kind of all at once or it was, throughout the years, they did gradually convince nearly all of Ghana's people to convert to Islam, making Ghana's empire kind of a Muslim kingdom. Many other kingdoms formed around Ghana's empire and competed with it for trade. Maria, yes.
So my question is, how do they find the right name for all the people, or are they just named by themselves?
Usually the name means something, and it kind of just develops from there. I don't think there's ever a period of time when someone says, we're going to call ourselves this. I think it just kind of naturally happens, and over time, the name comes from somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, so Mali is that second kingdom. And so the rise of Mali, it began as one of the districts of Ghana. It was one of those little small districts. But after Ghana begins to decline, the district of Mali took over and became the Mali Empire. It was bigger and stronger than Ghana ever was. The new king of Mali, Sanarida, was clever and strong, and many of the things that he did during his early reign made Mali strong for many years. And he was also known as the Lion King. So in the economy, right, they realized that the path to great wealth was through trade. Trade routes that still existed in Ghana had largely collapsed after the invaders had come. So he sent messengers throughout Africa to tell merchants that the invaders were gone and that trade in West Africa was safe again. He built an army to protect trade routes, just as Ghana had. Merchants again began to come to Mali. He expanded his nation all the way to the areas of the salt mines in the north and the gold mines in the south. So the merchants could trade for gold and salt directly with Mali. He also wanted to help his people who were suffering after the fall of Ghana. He ordered his army to help clear the farmland so that farmers could begin to grow crops again. One crop that was introduced was cotton. Like gold and salt, cotton became a very valuable export for the Mali Empire. Slavery was common in the Mali Empire, and when he kind of came to power, he gave slaves the opportunity to earn their freedom. He also made laws that kind of ordered people to treat those workers better. Then came Mansa Musa, and it was his grandson. Mansa Musa was also a great king. He broke the empire into kind of provinces to make it easier to rule, and he appointed a governor for each province. Although Mansa Musa was a devout Muslim, he allowed the freedom of religion to his people. And during his reign, he made a pilgrimage to Mecca, which every Muslim is required to do at least once, if they can afford to do so. He brought tons of gold with him, but gave it all away on his one-year trip. In Mali, he was known for his generosity. Mansa Musa made certain that his people enjoyed the same luxuries and goods that he himself did. So education in Mali, merchants were not the only ones to kind of come to Mali. Under Mansa Musa, scholars from the Muslim world came there as well. A great university, one of the oldest in the world, was founded at the city of Timbuktu. Mali's greatest city. It became kind of this great center for learning, and many of the rulers that followed were not as wise or as generous as those two initial rulers. So the fall of Mali and the rise of the Songhai. The Songhai Empire began kind of invading and conquering much of Mali's land in the late 15th century, including Timbuktu. The Songhai's empire soon replaced Mali as West Africa's most powerful empire. They began as a fishing community, and its people traded fish for the goods that they needed with Mali and to its merchants from other lands. The people of Songhai refused to pay taxes to the Mali Empire, and these rulers of Mali made an exception, however. After all, they really liked their fish. So basically, they refused to pay taxes, and Mali for a while just said, okay, that's fine, just keep giving us your fish. So as the Mali Empire as a whole began to weaken, Songhai grew stronger and it developed a strong government. It raised its own army. The king of the Songhai was Sunni Ali, and he was a devout kind of Muslim, and he was a great warrior and leader. He organized his troops to conquer all the cities of Mali. They conquered and controlled the kind of central cities on Mali's trade routes, such as Timbuktu. And by the year 1460, Sunni Ali had conquered all of Mali and many of its neighboring states. The biggest difference between Mali and the Songhai empires is that the common people were not treated as well in Songhai. The wealthy were very rich, but everyone else was very poor. The reforms that kind of the Mali kings had made were abandoned, and the people worked in the mines, in the farms, in fields, lived in poverty. A clan system, much like a caste system in India, kind of determined a person's occupation. Slavery became very common again. Slaves became a major export of the Songhai Empire, just like gold and salt. Everyone, men, women, and children, could be captured and sold into slavery for no reason at all. So Songhai religion, as the Songhai Empire expanded, it became very diverse. People of many cultures lived in the empire. The rulers of the wealthy people were Muslim. Laws were based on the laws of Islam. However, many other people did not practice Islam. Instead, they practiced their traditional African religions. They believed in many gods, spirits, and magic. And then finally, once again, the empire falls. History repeats itself again in the late 16th century. The Songhai found it hard, how hard it was to control an empire that was so large. When their last leader died, a civil war was fought to determine who would follow him as king. This conflict made the empire very weak, and over centuries, it took advantage of this weakness. They were invaded from the north, and many of these invaders had guns, which gave them an advantage. The Songhai Empire eventually broke into many smaller kingdoms. All right, last new quiz section of the year. All right, so West Africa. Let's see which reasons for the decline of the Ghana Empire was a result of a natural disaster. So which one of these things is a natural disaster? Trade routes opened outside of Ghana, rival armies invaded, a drought caused farmers and the residents to leave, and individual states sought independence from an empire. Which one is a natural disaster? This should be pretty easy. Let's see. Maria, go ahead.
I think it's C.
Good. The drought. The drought's a natural disaster. Good. What was the result of the Niger River's yearly flooding? It was disastrous because people drowned. It was disastrous because crops were destroyed and fish died. It was minimal because it happened each year at the same time and it was expected. It was minimal because barely anyone lived around the Niger River. Nicholas, what do we think?
C.
Good. So because it was expected, right? The damage was minimal, right? They knew about it and they planned for it. What was the main purpose of Mali's military? Was it to conquer neighboring areas, to help feed the people, to protect its trade routes, or to protect the empire's leader? What was their primary function? Luis, what do you think?
D.
D? It's actually not D, but that's okay. What do we think, Rhea?
C.
Good. C, to protect the trade routes, right? Remember, they were very dependent on trade, so they wanted to keep those trade routes safe. Good job. Songhai and Mali treated their poor very differently. How so? The Mali forced the poor to join the army if they wanted food, and the Songhai did not. The Mali treated their poor well, whereas the Songhai did not. The Songhai forced the poor to convert to Islam, and in Mali they did not. The Songhai gave gave the poor much better aid, and Mali did not. Jonathan, what do we think?
It's B.
Is B. Good job.
Yeah.
So in Mali, the poor were treated much better. Which statement about West African religions is true? Which one is true? Many converted to Christianity and fought with the Muslims. Many converted to Islam, but many kept their local African religions too. People were generally atheist and had no religion. People believed in animal worship and sun gods. Rhea, what do we think?
B.
B, good. A lot of people converted to Islam, but there were also a lot of people that kept kind of their native African religions as well. Okay, good job. All right, so let's talk about the last assignment before your final exam, and that's 8.07. I actually think this assignment is really easy for being a Sprite assignment, and at the end. So basically, like a lot of the other assignments, it gives you a chart, and the chart has blanks in it. And you have to fill out the chart kind of as the first column talking about Asia, specifically the Tang, Song, Mongols, and Ming dynasty, and then the African side talking about East Africa and West Africa. Now, I did get a really good question on this the other day, and it basically was like, when I fill out social, do I have to tell you something social about all 4 of those dynasties and about all 4 of those African countries? And the answer really is kind of no. What you might want to do is kind of try to find things that are in common and mention that, or kind of maybe just mention a couple things in each one. Okay, so for example, for social, under Africa, if you want to maybe say one thing about one of the East African empires and then one thing about one of the West African empires, that's probably good. Okay, if you want for social in China, if you want to mention one thing about the Mongols and one thing about the Mings, that's probably fine too. Okay, or if you can find something that kind of encompasses all of them, you can say that too. Okay, but you want to make sure, guys, that you download the chart, fill out the blank sections with accurate, detailed information, and make sure you're thorough, okay? Make sure you're thorough. And then finally, at the end of the chart, there are all those focus questions, and you want to make sure you answer at least 4 of those focus questions in 3 to 5 sentences. So it's very similar to the things you've been doing in this module up to this, or in these lessons up to this point. So that's a good thing, right? It's nothing new or different. Just make sure you fill out the chart, make it thorough, make sure it's in your own words, make sure it's accurate information, and then answer 4 of those focus questions, whichever 4 you choose. Talia, do you have a question?
Yes. For my page chart, it said that I needed to be at 8.05, but I already finished that. So should I get ahead
Absolutely.
and try and do the 8.07?
Yep, because like I said, the sooner you finish, the sooner it's summer vacation for you. It's always okay to go ahead as long as you're not rushing, which you wouldn't be rushing.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see, any other questions about this? Like I said, I think it's pretty straightforward. The only issue I've been seeing is kids not giving me enough information in the chart, okay? If you overdo it, it's probably a little bit better. And as always, make sure it's in your own words. Okay. So hopefully at this point, you've been able to kind of define what a traditional economy is, explain what led to the rise of the merchant class, interpret the kind of ecosystems of West Africa, and explain the rise and fall of Eastern and Western African empires. Okay, so thanks guys for coming. I appreciate it. I will be here for a few minutes if any of you have any questions. If not, you can go ahead and sign out. Thank you so much for coming.